Hi everyone, me again, thankfully. For those of you that saw our last episode, I just want to acknowledge how touched I have been and continue to be for all the words of encouragement and support and love. For those of you that haven't seen that episode, just a quick remark that on February 4th I underwent brain surgery for a meningioma tumor that was right here behind my right eyebrow. And thankfully it was benign, and I am literally a walking miracle that 6 weeks later that I'm doing the things that I'm doing and feeling as good as I do. So I don't want to belabor that point, but I want to thank all of you that saw the last episode and reached out to me. It really means a lot to me. So thank you. I want to start this episode by mentioning we have a winner for the $500 gift card, and it is a YouTuber who goes by the name of June A. So happy to announce that we were able to follow through with that. And I want to mention one of the residue issues from my surgery is I have some short-term memory loss, which I'm working on. And but just to be safe, I've got a cheat sheet here on this episode that we're doing, and hope you don't mind, but it's better to be more accurate. So this episode is going to be on Hubert de Givenchy. Monsieur Givenchy was truly an aristocrat and a gentleman from bygone days. I mean, it's kind of an elegance. You think of Cary Grant, and he was beloved by people in the upper echelon. He started off, his family, he's definitely an aristocrat. His family, his mother's side, I believe, were friends with people that were tapestry makers, and as a very young child, he became familiar with textiles and was fascinated by them. And at the age of 10, he went to a fair with his mom in France and saw the designs of Chanel and Schiaparelli and a few other, I think Molyneux was in there. And at that point, he announced to his mother that he wanted to be a clothing designer. You know, we did a little bit of research before we started this episode, and I have to tell you, that's one of my pleasures in sharing with you, is that I get to dive in for a short period of time to think of what it is that I want to tell you about in terms of designers or pieces. And I found out a couple of things that I never knew in general, which I will share with you. But I have to tell you that after reading about Monsieur Givenchy, I really feel like I missed out on meeting an amazing soul, an amazing creator, and an incredible, just a gentleman. When he was 17, he left Paris to go to the École des Beaux-Arts, and the next year, through family connections, he got an apprenticeship for Jacques Fath. And if you look at his history, the obituary that I read, and I'm getting a lot of this information from, is in the New York Times, and we will post a link to that because it's a really good, very thorough chronology of his life. But he also worked for Lucien Lelong, which was when Lelong, Christian Dior, it was the year that Christian Dior left to start his own company. The post-war years were very challenging for couturiers because people didn't have the money or the inclination to spend a lot of money on expensive fabrics and also haute couture. But from 47 to 52, Givenchy worked for Schiaparelli, which, I mean, oh my God, the people that he worked with. And he began thinking about starting his own design house. And so in 1952, Givenchy ventured out on his own. And the March 3rd issue of Life magazine has a 4-page spread on him, and the description of him really brought him to the mass audience. He created a collection of 3 tops, I believe, and 3 skirts. And his whole theory was that you could mix and match each piece so that with those 3 and 3 pieces, you could have actually 9 outfits, which is remarkable. I know Donna Karan did something very similar to that. Probably it was in the 1980s. And he also created couture, like ball gowns and things like that as well. But he really focused on ready-to-wear as well as designing for the elite. And his clientele was spectacular, from the Duchess of Windsor to Jackie Kennedy to, I mean, the list goes on and on. Everybody knows his most famous muse and client was Audrey Hepburn. And their relationship began very early on in his career. He was just working on his second collection when Audrey Hepburn contacted him, and when he was notified that Ms. Hepburn was coming, he had assumed it was Katharine Hepburn. And when Audrey Hepburn showed up, she was not known yet. He was very disappointed, and he basically said, I'm too busy working on my second collection. But for some reason, they went out to dinner, and at that point, he decided that he would do anything for her. And so began this historic and memorable relationship. Audrey Hepburn actually said that when she met Monsieur Givenchy in 1953, she was still wearing homemade dresses. So you can imagine the contrast of that to what he created for her. And really, I mean, truly in the 20th century, she is on the top of the list of fashion icons. So Audrey Hepburn wore mostly Givenchy clothes, I think strictly Givenchy clothes in her films, because very early in her career when she did Sabrina, Edith Head was nominated for Best Costume Design in Sabrina, and when she won, she gave no acknowledgement to Givenchy for his contribution for Audrey Hepburn's wardrobe. And it was at that point Audrey Hepburn said, nope, never going to use Edith Head, even though she was the biggest costume designer in the world. So interesting, the loyalty that she showed, and how appropriate that she showed that loyalty. Givenchy became enamored. I mean, his idol was Balenciaga. And probably maybe 10 years, maybe less into his career, he had the good fortune of meeting him. And in fact, he ended up opening his atelier across the street from him. Well, because Givenchy had such a long career, I think what I want to do is focus on what we have on the mannequins, because they were made during his lifetime. And some of the other pieces that we have here, actually I think we have one other piece that was made during his career, maybe 2 others. But his choice of fabrics and his design skill is just out of this world. I had a strapless cocktail dress with a matching shawl that was made out of the same fabric, that was complete, and it had the Givenchy label. This, unfortunately, is missing its inner fittings, its lining, and also the label. And I'm saying this is an attribution to Givenchy just because I haven't done the research, but I'm assuming that since the fabric is exactly the same and this looks like the type of thing he would have designed, I need to take it to Paris and actually do the research. But you can see this is a one shoulder. It's a coupe de velour. It's a satin with velvet, like a shaved. So part of the paisley actually has texture. It's an exquisite material, and intense ruching on the right bust area. But what's incredible, and you'll see with the photographs that Mike has taken, it actually has a bustle bum. The back rear end is like a bustle area, and probably could fit Kim Kardashian, but that's another story. Anyway, this other piece here is a piece that I actually bought at a place that sells Hollywood costumes, and I bought it many years ago. It's this wonderful wool tweed, and the top has this great intricate design of wrapping and then buttoning, and it's a double wrap. The other button is here in the back. teeny tiny size, and it has a Paramount attribution. Givenchy sold his company to LVMH around 1988, and as a result, he stayed on as creative director, and he presented his last couture collection in 1995. Shortly after his presentation, it was announced that John Galliano would be taking over the helm. And apparently that was a rather abrupt announcement. He was not really given much notice. Galliano stayed on for a little bit, and then Alexander McQueen took over. The people they brought on were really interesting, but in many ways were not a match aesthetically to what Givenchy had created over the decades. Julian MacDonald followed Alexander McQueen, and then in 2005, the label was handed over to Riccardo Tisci, and he really did a number on the collection. And I'm not saying that in a positive light because Givenchy himself was not happy. It was, he did not like to have his name associated with the designs that came out from Tisci. I can't remember what year it was, but Claire Waite-Killer took over, and as recently as last year, the new designer is Matthew Williams. Actually, it's, April of 2020. We'll start off with his impact on what people call the little black dress. People attribute Chanel, a lot of people attribute her to the LBD, but really the popularity of the little black dress is a result of Givenchy. And although we don't have any of his iconic LBDs, we pulled this late 50s Galanos as an example of the kind of aesthetic that he would draw from. I mean, you can totally see someone like Audrey Hepburn wearing this piece. And it's a classic and timeless, and you can wear it now, you know, for the next 100 years, and it'll still be relevant. What I love about this particular piece, even though it's not Givenchy, is it mixes a knit wool with a chiffon, and it's a bubble design. So then we have a Lifetime Couture Givenchy coat dress, which is this beautiful pot de soie, and it is tailored. It's for someone pretty short, but the detailing, the notched collar, which is almost 1930s in silhouette, but the asymmetrical buttoning, and then it allows for a diagonal line with the fold over. It's very chic and very classy. I mean, he just did beautiful, beautiful designs. And then this piece, I love. It reminds me of an Adrian design that I had that probably was Galliano's inspiration, I would say, because this was Galliano's tenure at Givenchy, and it is two types of fabric. It's the satin and the wool, and it's the iconic little black dress. Sexy but chic. And then last but not least, this is a more contemporary Givenchy. You can tell by the label, and it has its own chic quality, but this was during Riccardo Tisci's tenure. So this is actually a little bit of a larger size, even though it's marked a 40. It seems a little bit bigger than that. It has a feeling of the sack dress that was designed by Balenciaga and Givenchy worked with. And then it has this fabulous flutter sash that could be used as a stole. You can work with this on so many ways with this dress. But yeah, so these are the Givenchy pieces that we currently have in stock. So in closing, I want to say that he passed away in 2018. He was 91 at the time. And he's survived by his longtime partner, Philippe Vinet, who is also a couturier. And, you know, he has left an indelible mark on fashion in general and has impressed the importance of Parisian couture, especially after World War II. So he was a nobleman who had a tremendous impact on the fashion world, and he came from aristocracy. His father was a marquis, and yet he did not live a world of entitlement. He created this beautiful, beautiful world, and we've all benefited from it because fashion has been impacted by his designs. One of the cool facts that I didn't know that I discovered doing the research for this episode was when he launched his line in 1952, one of the pieces in the collection was called the Bettina blouse. And at the time, it was very common for American retailers to pay a fee. And I'm actually reading this from the New York Times article. The fee was called a caution, and they would pay the fee to couture designers in order to buy their patterns so that they could copy them line for line at home. I mean, that's like, wow, how cool. I mean, I've seen I-Magnin labels from the 40s and 50s where you know that it was a direct copy of, let's say, a Madame Grès or one of the top couturiers in France. It said that a copy of the Bettina blouse sold at Russik's in New York, I guess that's a department store, for $10.95 back in 1952. Well, two examples of couture originals with lavish embroidery from Mr. Givenchy's first collection, according to the New York Times that year, cost $2,800 back in 1952. I think houses cost that much. So that gives you an idea of the value of haute couture then and also now, you know. Givenchy also had a line of children's clothing, men's things. He even designed a car for Lincoln, the car line, which, I mean, wow, talk about ahead of his time, right? Givenchy had such an eye for all things beautiful that he collected art and antiques and was actually regarded as an advisor, I think, for some very important collections. And so, you know, you transcend your taste level not just in textiles and clothing, but you move it into interior decorating, antiques and collectibles. He was one of those people. And like I said earlier, I really wish that I had an opportunity to meet him. So in closing, I want to say that Givenchy may not be looked upon today in the same kind of light that he was, where he was revered in the 50s and 60s and even 70s. I really feel that LVMH diminished his light because I've seen many pieces with their original price tags after his company was sold. And I mean, outrageous prices for things that I consider to be pret-a-porter. And the designs and styles just weren't there. So, you know, that's why I love vintage, is that the earlier pieces really touch my heart, and I know they do yours as well. But I want to say I'm going to make a real effort to do one episode a week, despite the fact that I'm still recovering from my surgery. And I want to once again thank you all for your love and support. And I love this community. I feel so blessed and so grateful that we have a way of connecting. And I'm going to try to respond to those of you that wrote to me directly in the comments, but I get overwhelmed very quickly. So if I don't, I apologize, but know that I do read your comments and I'm ever so grateful. So if you like this episode, please give us a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber and you like this episode, please subscribe. And other than that, we look forward to seeing you next episode. And I wish you good health and be safe and be well. Okay? Take care. Bye.